I think Florio was a lawyer when we first started 15 years ago. Is that right? You were a lawyer? You weren't even in this business 15 years ago?
I was in the business. I was practicing law, and I was in the business. You started inviting me on foolishly about 15 years or so ago. And I remember when you left the mothership, Fritzy would invite me on, and I still didn't quite understand why. But yeah, I was doing both jobs kind of full time until NBC came along in 2009. And that's when I escaped the practice of law forever.
He's Mike Florio. He runs the website Pro Football Talk, also Pro Football Talk Live with Chris Sims that precedes our show on the program. All right, recap the week. What has stood out so far since Sunday's games, Monday's games?
Well, I know what stood out to me. It's not standing out to the NFL or the NFL Players Association, but Dan, we're still in the aftermath of this Tua Tagovailoa situation, and we were horrified by what we saw on Thursday night. We were stupefied by what we saw the prior Sunday. And then Sunday night, Cameron Brady of the Buccaneers slams his head into Chris Godwin, lands on the ground, struggles to his feet, runs off the field. 2 plays later, he's back in, maybe 3. However many plays it was, he's back in without ever being checked for a concussion. They check him at halftime, he's got a concussion. He's out for the game. And the league's position and the union's position is the spotters who are paid to be monitoring the activity believe that Cameron Brate clearly hit his shoulder, not his head. Our lying eyes would say otherwise. And it's amazing to me that of all the times that the NFL should be as buttoned up as it could be when it comes to flagging potential concussions, it would be in the first primetime game played after the primetime game in which we were horrified by the sight of Tua Tagovailoa in the fencing posture and stretchered off the field. And Dan, what's going to happen is it's getting brushed under the rug. It's all going away. But it's a sign that there are real issues still with the NFL's concussion protocol, maybe issues they can never fix. But this one is not going to be given any time of day. They don't want any more heat in a hot kitchen. They're already dealing with enough with Tua. They're just going to pretend this thing didn't happen, even though it did. That is amazing to me. And there isn't a damn thing we can do about it other than say, this is amazing. I can't believe they're doing it.
And I was told yesterday that now they're going to go the opposite. There's going to be an overreaction, an overcorrection with protocol. That is going to happen probably later this week. And also, the Dolphins doctor is not checking Tua for the concussion. He's checking him for the back. So the neurologist paid the price by saying, hey, he doesn't have a concussion. The Dolphins doctor got off here. Like, all right, you checked him for his back, which is supposed to be the reason why he stumbled a couple of times, and then you put him back into the game. It felt like somebody had to pay the price. This unnamed neurologist, because I was told that the NFL didn't want to embarrass him by mentioning his name, that he lost his job. But that's sort of what's playing out here and will over the next day or two.
Well, that's right. And we should be getting some sort of an answer. We've been promised transparency. Now, how accurate will the information be? I don't know. And Dan, one of the big questions is whether or not anybody even looked at the video of Tua Tagovailoa stumbling and being held up by a teammate. The protocol requires the doctors to review the video. I can't get anyone to tell me with any degree of certainty that they actually did. And as I've said this and written it, no one has contacted me and said, hey, you're barking up the wrong tree here. And trust me, they're not bashful about telling me that if they think I'm barking up the wrong tree. Nobody has said you should quit talking about the possibility they didn't watch the video. But how astounding would that be? And Dan, here's what I think it all comes back to. And this is going to piss people off at 345 Park Avenue, but I think this is the fundamental truth. And this is why Cameron Brate is being swept under the rug. You got an existential threat to the game here as it relates to the supply of young football players. And if I'm a parent with a kid playing high school football and I'm watching these NFL games and I say, even this state-of-the-art structure for protecting players doesn't work, how can I expect the local high school sports conference to protect my son and get him out of the game when he's banged his head? If the NFL can't do it when Cameron Brate bangs his head with 22 million people watching and 22 million people seeing it, how can I ever fully trust that my son is safe on a football field? And I just thank God my son's at the age where I don't have to run that analysis through my brain right now because I'm not sure what the end result would be.
Yeah, but you have the players are going to continue to lie to stay in the game. Dan Orlovsky was with us yesterday, and he said, yeah, if I was 24, I'd be lying. Drew Brees said, I lied all the time. I'd even lie to my wife. What's Tua saying when he goes to the sidelines? He's probably saying, my back, he didn't want to come out of the game.
Right.
So how do you get players to understand, how can we protect you if you don't help us protect you?
Well, but they're never going to. There's only a small handful of players who have the luxury of tapping out and not worrying about their job. I remember when Ben Roethlisberger did it in a Steelers game in Pittsburgh 7-8 years ago. He was heralded for doing the selfless thing that was for the good of the game. Yeah, because he doesn't have to worry about getting Wally pipped. Everybody else has to worry about that. And especially Tua, in a year where he's got to prove not just ability, but durability. And that's the other thing that doesn't get discussed here with Tua. He's got an obligation to protect himself on a football field. Drew Brees protected himself. The smaller quarterbacks. I remember the first time I was ever at an NFL-related function, and guys like Dan Marino and Boomer Esiason there, it's like, holy crap, where's the beanstalk? Like, these guys are huge. They're giants. And Drew Brees, normal size. Russell Wilson, normal size. Tua, normal size. You got to get rid of the ball. You got to avoid getting ragdoll. That hit, 6'5" guy isn't going to go down the way that Tua went down on Thursday night. A guy who's 6'1", which means he's 5'11", 190, which means he's 175, he's going down in a very violent way. So that's part of it too. But that makes it all the more important, Dan, because we know we're not going to get the truth from the players. The structure has to be in place where it accepts we're never going to get the truth from the players. We got to have another way to find out what's really going on inside their heads after they take an impact to the skull.
He's Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk. The report came out from the New York Post, which is owned by the Murdoch family, and they own Fox, and Tom Brady is employed by Fox, so they've got the information that they've been reporting about Tom Brady's marriage. Is this fair game now to talk to? Are you allowed to, in a sports setting, talk to Brady about what's going off the field? And could that affect him on the field?
I wrote something about this a couple of weeks ago because CNN got involved in the Tom Brady personal life beat and reported that Tom and Giselle were living separately. It's like CNN's reporting, like what kind of strange world is this? But when you're talking about somebody who lives an inherently public life, and he was asked about it generally a few weeks ago, does it bother him? And he understands. You can't have it both ways. There are plenty of guys in sports who have this attitude of, hey, everybody, look at me. Well, wait a minute. What the hell are you looking at? You can't have it both ways. If you want that attention and all the money that comes from it and all the adulation and praise, you can't pick and choose what people look at. And Brady gets it. And hey, if we're going to be obsessed over whether or not his finger is affecting his performance, his shoulder is affecting his performance, and the guy disappeared for 11 days of training camp, and we never got a straight answer why. If there's some turmoil in his personal life that potentially affects his performance, that's relevant. The Buccaneers' entire team had to go to Miami last week, and they all stayed in a hotel with kids and pets. It was like Noah's Ark there, and they lost the game. And Todd Bowles, the head coach, was saying last night on the Buccaneers radio network, we couldn't focus. So, yeah, anything that keeps a guy from focusing on the task at hand is fair game, especially when it's one of the highest profile athletes / celebrities married to somebody who is extremely high profile. I think it does become fair game. And when the Murdoch family's newspaper is reporting this, when they're ready to pay him $37.5 million a year, I think that does make it fair.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because there were members in our profession who were critical of us prying into Tom Brady's life. I always go back to Tiger Woods. When Tiger was, whatever was happening off the golf course, until it affected him on the golf course, then I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to be fair. Brady missed practices. Now it becomes something more than that. And I asked Brady about this months ago when we were on a conference call and we got to ask him a question. And I asked him about, I was 50 when I decided to go home. I knew it was time to leave ESPN. I said, you got to eventually go home. Like, when do you, like that tug of war that you and Giselle have? And he kind of pushed it off and said, well, I don't know if they want me at home all the time. But then he did answer it later, and he got a little emotional about it because he's addicted. We all have addictions. He's addicted to football. And his wife said, I want you to come home. And he decided to come back and play football here. So it's a real thing. It's just, I don't know how forthcoming he's going to be in a press conference if they lose to the Falcons this weekend. Is that fair game? Like it feels like the door is open. Can you ask him questions and still be keeping them in a sports-related manner?
I think it's all fair game at this point because he's already said he understands it goes with the territory.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's fair to ask him if he throws 3 interceptions against the Falcons. Is the fact that you and your wife have hired divorce lawyers the reason for you throwing 3 interceptions? But I think it's fair game for general questions in his midweek press conference, which usually happens on Thursday, and just for analysis like, hey, this guy is dealing with stuff that no NFL player has ever dealt with. He has stretched the rubber band farther than anyone ever has. The tank is well below E. Everything with him is uncharted waters. And we don't know. He doesn't know. Nobody knows where it goes from here. And it is fascinating. And you just can't look. If you're going to have this huge social media platform and you're selling underwear and crypto, how in the world can you run and hide when there's some big deal like this that causes you to disappear for 11 days of training camp and no one will explain? And they try to act like it was all pre-planned and nobody believes it was pre-planned. It's just a reality show that is playing out for all of us to see. And it directly affects the performance of the player, which directly affects the performance of the team. And you got all the DraftKings and FanDuel commercials for people to bet. And they're making bets based upon how guys are going to perform. I think it is fair game to talk about it and wonder how it's going to affect him.
Before I let you go, is there a coach that's on the hot seat?
Oh, Matt Rule.
Okay.
Matt Rule. Matt Rule will be lighting the Yule log this year.
So a rule instead of a Yuletide, it's
That's right.
a Rule Tide log.
How's he going to last, Dan? Poor Baker Mayfield. He made a $4.5 million bet on himself. We love it when guys bet on themselves because it's not our money. He made a $4.5 million bet on himself, all things told, when he took the trade to Carolina, thinking he's going to have the kind of year that sets him up for a big contract. Through 4 weeks, he's got a lot of work to do. And you know, when Ben McAdoo's the offensive coordinator, all due respect, I mean, it's kind of hard to find a good offensive coordinator when the offensive coordinators who are being considered know that everyone's job is riding on this guy getting it done. So you're getting down to choice 5, 6, or 7. Matt Rule, I know he says he's not concerned about it. Well, maybe he's not. Maybe he's past it because it just feels like it's a matter of time before David Tepper
absolutely.
says, see you later.
But can Nathaniel Hackett be on the hot seat this early in his coaching career?
Well, I think that he could be one and done. Every time a coach gets fired after 1 year, we've got a post at PFT that we dust off and update to remind everybody that it happens a lot more often than you think. You got new ownership that did not hire him, and we've seen some fundamental flaws in game planning, in game execution, decision-making, not making decisions quickly enough, making bad decisions. And these folks who come from Walmart, where they have put together a multi-billion-dollar company, a company that has, like, they've got, like, everybody in that family's a billionaire. That's how much money this company has made. They're not going to screw around, Dan. That in the time that I have been explaining to you Nathaniel Hackett's status, Walmart has made enough money to finance his buyout and then some. They won't hesitate to say, see you later, Nathaniel Hackett.
Always great to talk to you, Mike. Thank you.
Good talking to you. Congratulations on the 15 years.
Thank you, Mike. Mike had the under, by the way. He goes, there's no way you last that 15 years. The under was like 5 months, something like that, 6 months.